always worried they would gossip about us or be staring at us, the two peculiar girls who lived in the attic. Let them, I said. I took her hand and together we walked down the grand staircase to the entrance hall. The tap-tap of our shoes and the tiles on the tiles echoed around the marble hall and bounced off the columns that reached to the high ceiling, 2 levels above us. I glanced to my left through the double doors into the opulent dining room beyond. It was a habit of mine when I came downstairs. The ground hall and adjoining dining room were the only 2 areas of the house I'd seen other than the attic, and for all I knew, the rest of Windermere Manor was nothing like those rooms. I couldn't help comparing what I saw to our attic. Our sparse wool covered low ceilinged space couldn't be further removed from the dining room. Slender statues of Roman goddesses were tucked into carved niches, then touches of gliding here and there broke up the pristine white of the walls and mantel. There was a rug too, but it was free of burns, and nothing covered the large mahogany table or sideboard. "Good afternoon, Lady Violet," said the stiff butler, Pearson. He opened the front door and bowed, revealing his bald patch. "Enjoy your walk." Thank you," Vi stuttered. Her face flushed to the roots of her hair, and her grip tightened on my hand. "Good afternoon, Pearson," I said breezily. He hadn't addressed me, but sometimes when I was feeling particularly irreverent, I cast aside the rules of propriety. I was, after all, a prisoner, a narcoleptic, and a companion to a lady who started fires with her mind. Propriety was the least of my concerns. It must have been the prospect of seeing him again that fueled my impish mood. The tall, dark-haired gardener with the intense gaze and the handsome face had occupied my thoughts ever since I'd first noticed him on our walk almost 2 weeks earlier. I'd seen him every time we'd taken a turn in the garden since. When I'd asked Miss Levine his name, she dismissed my question with a flick of her skeletal fingers. "Where shall we go?" I asked Vi. "Down to the lake or across the park?" It wouldn't matter which way we went. He would be there. I knew it as surely as I knew my name was Hannah Smith. Without waiting for an answer, I steered Vi down the terraced garden, Miss Levine trailing behind. That was another reason I enjoyed our walks. Although Miss Levine was always in attendance, she stayed a few paces back, giving Vi and I privacy. "The sky looks rather ominous," Vi said, stopping abruptly. She cast a glance over her shoulder, and I followed her gaze just in time to see a pale face disappear from a window on the first floor. I didn't know which room the window looked into, but I recognized the face. It belonged to Vi's 15-year-old sister, Eudora. Vi and I had never met her, having been condemned to the attic together when Eudora was born, and not meeting her even once on our walks. When we'd first seen her watching us through the window some 10 years ago, Miss Levine had informed us that she was Vi's sister. It was the first we'd heard about her. We'd not even heard her crying as a baby. I suspected Eudora had been ordered to stay away from voice except Vi and I. "Continue, girls," barked Miss Levine. "Violet, Violet, don't stop now." Violet held the brim of her hat and led the way across the park toward the woods. The breeze ruffled the feathers attached to the hat band, and a strand of my hair fluttered against my cheek. "You're looking for him, aren't you?" Vi said as I drew alongside her. "Don't be ridiculous. You shouldn't. You know nothing about him." "What has that got to do with anything?" She held the lapels of her coat together at her throat for warmth. "He could be dangerous. He could be waiting behind the bushes, too." I snorted. "Vi, stop worrying. What do you think he's going to do with me and Miss Levine, with you and Miss Levine here? Ravish me?" I laughed at the absurdity of it, but even so, my scalp tingled at the thought of the new gardener kissing me. "It's not a joke, Hannah." We'd almost reached the edge of the woods, and she stopped again, eyeing the bank of trees as they would stretch out their branches and capture us. "It'll start raining soon. You want to turn back, don't you?" She looked down at her boots and said nothing. "Come on," I said. "The exercise will do you good. Cool that fire within you." I smiled at my little joke, but she only frowned harder. I winced. "Sorry." "If you're determined to have your walk, then let's walk." Her tone was curt, crisp, so like Miss Levine's. "I want to go into the woods today." "Really? I thought you hated the woods." I glanced back at Miss Levine. She still followed, her gaze focused not on us, but on the trees. I tilted my face into the cool breeze, and a fat raindrop exploded on my cheek. "Bloody hell." "Hannah," Vi scolded. She hated my occasional outburst, but she was used to them nevertheless and no longer truly shocked. "We'd better hurry up," I said, walking faster, clutching my gloves tighter. Another raindrop splashed on the end of my nose, then another and another. "We need to find shelter. Should we head towards the orangery instead?" "No." I blinked at her. Her vehemence was so odd, so unlike her. "The woods are closer." She set off at a run towards the trees, and I followed. She was correct in that the thick canopy would provide some shelter against the rain. I didn't look around to see if Miss Levine followed until I reached the trees, and when I did, I was surprised to find that she was not with us. I'm just gonna take a sip of my coffee. "We should wait here for her," I said, breathing hard as she got up to me. I squinted through the rain and shook my head. "I can't see her. She must have decided to run to the orangery." The image of Miss Levine running anywhere was rather absurd, but it was odd that I couldn't see her. Whether she'd gone, it wasn't toward us. "The woodsman's cottage isn't far from here." Vi had to shout to be heard above the rain splattering against the leaves. "Let's wait for her there." "I don't particularly care to wait for Miss Levine anywhere," I said, "but let's go anyway. We'll enjoy our temporary freedom and get out of this weather." I set off along the path that had been hacked through the ferns and other bushes. Vi's footsteps thudded on the damp leaves and earth behind me. Although we moved as quickly as we could, we were both drenched by the time we reached the old woodsman's cottage in the clearing. I pushed open the door and stumbled bowls, cups, cutleries, and a pan, and placed strategically in front of the hearth were 2 chairs. Good Lord, I'm soaked. I removed my coat and threw it and my gloves over the back of the chair. Vi glanced around. We're alone. You sound surprised. I thought the gardeners may have sheltered here too. The gardeners did indeed use the cottage to store equipment or their packed lunch if they worked nearby, and we usually knocked before going inside, just in case. But despite the rain and the need for shelter, the single-room cottage was unoccupied. I wouldn't be surprised if someone comes, Vi said. One could only hope. I wouldn't mind seeing that new gardener again, although I was sure he wouldn't remain once he discovered us there. A male servant confined in a small space with Lady Violet would tarnish her reputation and be cause for malicious gossip if discovered. The fact that I worried about her reputation was laughable, considering she was unlikely ever to enter society and had no need of a reputation, either good or bad. They must be working farther away today, I said. Vi glanced out the window and hugged herself as a shudder racked her. The rain seems to have set in. We should start a small fire if we're to be here a while. She inspected the wood box near the hearth. There's no kindling. Will you fetch some, Hannah? Pity she couldn't set alight the thick piece of timber she removed from the box with the point of her finger. At least that would be a benefit to an affliction that made her life miserable. I ventured out again. The wind slammed the door closed behind me and lashed my damp skirt to my legs. It tugged my hair out from beneath my hat and drove the cold needles of rain into my cheeks. The tired, drooping porch did little to protect me or the neat stack of wood near the door. Hopefully, the kindling inside the box fared better. Kindling, kindling, kindling. I bent to open the lid, but stopped when I saw something move out of the corner of my eye. I turned to look. Nothing there except trees and rain. I straightened. Someone grabbed me from behind, a hand holding a cloth clamped over my nose and mouth. A sweet smell swamped me and clung to the back of my throat. I tried to scream, but what little sound came out would not have reached Vi. I scrabbled at the hand, trying to pull it away, but my attacker was too strong. His other arm circled my waist, holding me against his body. I knew it was a man. No woman was built like a steel brace. The sweet smell filled my head, my lungs, and I began to feel myself drifting into a fog. A sudden wave of panic lent me strength. I clawed at that bare hand again. The man's breath hissed through his teeth as I peeled off some of his skin with my bare fingernails, but my fight was all too brief. The fog closed around me. My eyelids were too leaden to keep open. It's all right, Lady Violet, he said. His words vibrated through the back of my head, pressed into his chest. You'll come to no harm if you cooperate. I felt myself slipping away. I could no longer stand, and he picked me up. I would have been able to see his